So Bitcoin is pulling back as expected. Is this the end of the Bitcoin pullback, or should we expect lower prices over the coming weeks and months? I'm going to break it down and give a really quick update in terms of my thoughts on the Bitcoin price. Also, I'm going to take a look at the stock market, as I think stocks might be running into a bit of a sticky spot, maybe as soon as today. So I'm going to share with you a couple of positions I've opened on the stock market today. And also, I'm going to take a look at Tesla because big words, big blows shared between Elon and Trump. The bromance is over. Where does Tesla go from here? Is it a buy? Should we wait? I'm going to jump into it. So if you like that, keep on watching, smash the like, and let's go. So as you can see, Bitcoin currently putting in a pretty nice bounce after the drop down yesterday. Obviously, this drop down yesterday came into contact with our 50-day moving average down here. I did talk about Bitcoin potentially coming down to this ascending trend line. We'd actually got through that ascending trend line. I also spoke about the fact that I do like Bitcoin potentially coming down to the 50-week moving average. And as we can see, the 50-week moving average is fastly, or shall I say, is quickly rising, currently around about 82,500. Obviously, over the coming weeks, we will expect this to eventually come up to around the 90s towards the end of the summer. And I am expecting there to be at least some sort of retest again between Bitcoin and its 50-week moving average, likely towards the end of the summer. In the short term, what I'm looking for in terms of Bitcoin, or the level I'd be actually interested in buying Bitcoin myself, would actually be down at around this sort of 93. Oops, I swear this keypad has a mind of its own sometimes. I really need to get my mouse hooked up, but I would be expecting Bitcoin potentially to come into this area here. Obviously, this is where we previously saw some consolidation. I think there's probably still some trap shorts around this level. I would like to see us come down and retest this level, filling this inefficiency candle here and coming back down to the source of the breakout, the scene of the crime, as it's called, around about 97. I do think we can go down probably a bit lower than that, maybe as low as 93. So I would really say 94, 95,000 is a level. The only thing steering me away from thinking we could get to 93, 94,000 is just purely due to the fact that a lot of people have been talking about this area, this region, as a potential target. Usually, in my experience, in really bullish markets, these sorts of areas get front run. So I wouldn't be surprised if we came down to 99, 98 and ended up actually front running that region. Of course, if the market's a little bit more bearish, maybe we do go through that region and actually come a little bit further down, maybe into the high 80s, just to flush out any liquidity, any stops, any traders that have been getting leverage longs in around the sort of 94, 95,000 mark. And then Bitcoin could recover from there and put in a impressive move into the end of the year. And of course, if we just look at the weekly chart, then if we were to come down, let's say late summer into that sort of pocket around about sort of 91 to 89,000, for example, then potentially we do connect with this 50-week moving average, maybe even piercing through it. That would be all fine as long as we don't see weekly closes below this moving average. That has really been our line in the sand so far during this bull run, and I don't see why that would change over the rest of the cycle. So I think no matter what, there'll be so many traders looking at this moving average. If we do retest it, I would expect us to get a pretty big bounce from that level. So that is Bitcoin then. I think in the really short term, Bitcoin is likely running into a little bit of resistance here. If we can pop through this resistance, get above yesterday's high, and certainly get above Tuesday's high, so around about 106.8 thousand, then I would be saying that we can definitely make another attempt at all-time highs. But I think anywhere here, if we just do the Tuesday high and then we just look at the current Fibonacci on the shorter term charts, we can see we are starting to run into some resistance. I do quite like the 786 to 86 sort of fib as a retracement sort of pocket. Obviously, we've made it through the golden pocket, which is the 618 to 65. So potentially we do come a little bit higher, retest the high from yesterday, and then sellers step in. Sellers might even start to be stepping in here. If we actually look at yesterday's high and do a current sort of fib retracement, we can see that we are actually already in that 786 to 86 pocket. So potentially we're going to see some selling pressure come into the market. So I wouldn't be expecting too much higher from this move right here. What I would be expecting is potentially for us to come down. If we can hold 102,000, potentially that could be the low in, but I still do think there is risk to the downside. And just in general, just over the next few months, over the summer, I'm still calling for the path that I have drawn in really a few weeks ago. This has been drawn in for over a month now, and you can see we are following it fairly well. So potentially we do come down to the mid 90s, get a bounce, and we see this sideways chopping action over the summer. Potential flush at the end of the summer. Maybe that flush ties in with us coming down and reconnecting with the 50-week moving average. And then we make one more attempt at a high later on in the year. This very much also ties in with what I think the stock market's going to do. And also just ties in with what we usually see in post-election years. So that tends to be March, April weakness, strength going into the summer, and then weakness into the end of the summer. So that is definitely something that I believe is on the cards. If we look at the stock market as well, then we can see obviously things are playing out so far fairly well according to my path. Obviously, we don't have to come up here. And one of the reasons I think we might not come all the way up here is if we just, yeah, we've got the Tom DeMark indicator on here, we can see we are actually printing a daily 9 on the S&P today. So this can often be a sell signal, a sell indicator. It's what it shows is obviously a trend that is coming to an area potentially of exhaustion. The Tom DeMark sequential is a time-based indicator. So rather than just focusing on price, then it also gives us that time aspect, which I often think can be even more critical than price aspect, because there's many different levels you'll get on charts where we could potentially find support or resistance from, but actually to get the timing is usually that gives you that little edge as a trader to be mindful of where we're going sort of time wise. And you can see these nines appearing at levels before we've seen consolidation or pullbacks. So I'm actually expecting a pullback. Is the S&P in a position where we're actually going to see something like this happen? So could we potentially be putting in a high just before all-time highs to then go and put in a put in a lower high to then put in a potentially higher low from obviously the April lows? That's very, very possible. So I did say we could see this flush if the market stays strong, but we also have to be mindful that we might not get that flush and we might actually see a lower high here, which in which case could actually set us up for maybe a bit of a deeper pullback. But to be honest with you, that's not really what I'm considering right now. I'm really treating this as an area where potentially we might just see a higher low coming in and then taking another push. Maybe we see it play out like this, where we see a new all-time high in August before some weakness going into the end of the summer, or maybe we put in the high now. But I think putting in a new high, a slightly new high, similar to what Bitcoin has recently done with getting above 109,000, going up to sort of 112, would obviously be a bit of a trap, get everybody long, all the bears are wrong, and then that's when the selling comes in. Obviously, this could coincide with an initial rate cut. So obviously an initial rate cut will get front run. So maybe we see an initial rate cut being priced in September. Maybe that's what gets us up to the all-time highs. Maybe the big beautiful bill also gets passed in July, August, which sends us on that rally to all-time highs. And then we see some weakness after that, which kind of lines up with what we saw in Trump's sort of first term, when after the bill was passed, I believe it was passed right at the start of 2018. We then saw weakness in 2018. Obviously, that was a bear market for crypto. So do we see some weakness coming in after that? And then after the first rate cut, or the big beautiful bill is passed, do we then see some strength going into the end of the year? That is still my preferred outlook, and what I'm thinking we do in terms of a path. So yes, we obviously where do I need to go? Just do that. Definitely need to get my mouse sorted. So yeah, looking at the Nasdaq, we've got a similar setup in the Nasdaq. I'm actually short both the S&P and the Nasdaq just as a hedge. This is really just to manage risk. It's just to kind of make sure that I've got a little bit of profit coming in on a trade if the market does make a move down from here and decide to come and retest some of these levels or some of these moving averages. It's really just a hedge play to protect my portfolio from suffering too much downside, because obviously I've been open about the fact that I did buy aggressively on the April lows in the stock market, and obviously I'm still in a lot of those long positions. I'm still heavily long stocks here, so obviously I like to use shorts on the indices as a hedge play for those uh, stock spot positions. Yeah, there we go. And of course, I did want to also touch upon a stock. So, as you've probably heard, if unless you're living under a rock, that's not the stock I want. As you've probably heard, Elon Musk and Donald Trump have ended their bromance quite spectacularly. Uh, I won't pull up all the tweets right now just because I want to get this video done fairly quickly. But long story short, Tesla making an absolutely huge down move yesterday. I think it ended up around about sort of 10% down, but at one point it was 15% down from obviously open to close. And that actually marks a full pullback of 25% in Tesla in a month where Robotaxi is about to get launched in Austin. And assuming trials go well, that could really, really propel the Tesla share price a lot higher. So in situations like this, where you have a spat between two public figures, it can sometimes be countries that are having a spat. It can be CEOs of companies having a spat. But usually these public spats, they're nothing but words, okay? And if those words don't have direct consequences and direct actions, they're usually moves you want to fade. Now, you might turn around and say, well, President Trump is going to be cutting subsidies for Elon's companies. I don't know how much substance is actually behind that as a threat right now. Obviously, it's been known about that there would be subsidies for EV vehicles cut anyway. And there's even videos of Elon Musk coming out and saying he supports cuts of subsidies for EV, and he also supports cuts of subsidies for gas and for oil and other forms of power. So, look, I think this could escalate, but it's like, how much more does it escalate beyond what it currently has? It kind of went from 0 to 100 really quickly. All of a sudden, they're at each other's throats. Obviously, Trump using Truth Social, Elon Musk using his platform X, and there's already a few tweets and a few signs that these guys are, Elon Musk was replying to, I think, Bill Ackman, that had turned out and said, look, can't these guys both just get along? And Elon Musk was saying he agrees. So it seems like Elon Musk is willing to resolve this. Look, these are not, gangster rappers with a feud where, it just escalates and escalates and escalates until, somebody gets hurt. These are two very, very smart businessmen, arguably two of the most successful people of our generation, business-wise. And I'm sure they know that this is a complete PR disaster for both of them if they continue down this path of escalation. So I'm sure both of these men will want to de-escalate this. I'm sure everybody around them wants to de-escalate this. And I can really see this being de-escalated fairly quickly. And I think when that happens, Tesla almost certainly retraces most of this move. If Tesla gets back above these moving averages here and can manage to really re-establish itself above 305, I mean, it's around 300 right now, but if it can really get back above, 305, 320, then I think Tesla makes a move higher, probably to take out its highs back in last month in May. And we could likely be trading up towards sort of 400, 420, and all-time highs, maybe as soon as later on this year, especially if the robo-taxi deployment in Austin goes well. So I'm actually viewing Tesla as a great buy opportunity here. Obviously, we came down, and this is without a doubt a fingerprint of capitulation when you see this sort of high volume on a move like this, and obviously such a massive one-day drop. I think there was something I saw that the last 1 day drop in Tesla of over 20%, Tesla ended up something like over 110% up during that same year. So, obviously Tesla is currently down on the year, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if Tesla does get back to its yearly open. Where is its yearly open? So it's pretty much it's pretty much here, the opening on this candle, which is 390. So can it get back above 390 before the end of the year? I definitely think so. So for me, Tesla's a buy, not financial advice, but like I say, I expect this to blow over and resolve fairly quickly. Both of these men have, in my opinion, too much to lose from this feud continuing and escalating, and reputational damage, obviously damage to various business interests, Trump's political interests, Elon Musk's interest in terms of what he's doing with his many businesses, many very good businesses. And I think Tesla really, for me, is one of the best exposures you can have to the AI narrative moving forward. It's all about AI. It's got the humanoid robots. It's obviously got the robo taxi. It's got fully self-driving. Everything is that Elon Musk is doing with robotics and AI. He's putting through his Tesla business. Obviously, with the exception of things like XAI, he's got that on one side, but obviously the humanoid robots and robotics are all through Tesla. So I really think Tesla's a strong play and a strong investment for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think if you take a long-term mindset and zoom out, then you're going to look back at this and say any prices really below $300, I think, are decent buys. Tesla could, of course, on the bearish side, if we do take out this low, we could come as low as sort of 250, 240, potentially coming and even retesting these lows here. I can't really see us going much lower than that. I think a lot of this was fear driven over the tariffs. And obviously, the majority of companies have bounced back and are unlikely to see those levels again unless that really, really re-escalates. If we see a real re-escalation of the tariffs between, for example, the US and China, which could obviously maybe send us down to lower prices. But yeah, I think Tesla's a great buy. For full disclosure, I bought some myself, and I do expect that Tesla will be above 390, probably above 400 later on this year. So let's see how that plays out. So that's really where I want to leave it off. Obviously, Bitcoin, like I say, the risk of a deeper pullback is still in play. We are starting to lose that 105 level now. So let's see where Bitcoin goes from here. But absolutely, it's possible we come down into the mid 90s, in my opinion. And look, I think that would be healthy. I think some cooling off over the summer would be a very healthy thing for Bitcoin, and would allow, obviously, investors to re-enter the market at obviously higher prices than we saw back in March, April. And that will give us, obviously, then a higher base, a higher platform to then see gains, stronger gains, higher prices later on in the year. Obviously, Ethereum starting to break down as well. So Ethereum really needs to regain 2,500, or else it risks rejecting and going down to some of the lower targets. I still think we can go down to 2,000 on Ethereum. Very quickly looking at Solana breaking down as well. Tom DeMart daily 9, but is that going to be enough to save it from coming down to lower prices? I think Solana probably comes down to lower prices, maybe down to the 130s, maybe potentially retesting the lows, or at least getting close to the lows, maybe coming down to about 110 over the summer. And Sui as well, also risking breaking down to closer towards $2 over the next